This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
The committee is meeting at the request of 4 members of the committee to discuss their request to undertake a study of the use of spyware by federal institutions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would have a motion that was distributed, and I'm going to read it. That as of January 29th, 2024, the committee undertake a study concerning the use of technological tools capable of extracting personal data from telephones and computers in investigative processes conducted by several federal government departments and agencies. That the committee focus in particular on the reasons justifying the use of this investigative equipment by the various government institutions and on the privacy risk assessment process. That the committee devote at least 6 meetings to this study. That the committee invite each of the following witnesses to testify for at least 1 hour. A, the President of the Treasury Board. B, each of the senior officials of the following departments and agencies: Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, the Canada Revenue Agency, CRA, Shared Services Canada, the Competition Bureau, Global Affairs Canada, Transportation Safety Board of Canada, Natural Resources Canada, Correctional Service Canada, Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, National Defence, and Royal Canadian Mounted Police. C, the Privacy Commissioner. And D, any other expert witness that the committee deems necessary, provided that the President of the Treasury Board be the first of all to testify, and that the committee report its observations and recommendations to the House. Thank you. Thank you, Monsieur Villemur. The motion is in order.
You'll recall that in my notice of motion that I had in Section J, subsection J, Chris Alward, President of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, and Jennifer Carr, President of the Professional Institute of Public Service of Canada, be added to the witness list. So I don't know if we could, maybe find consensus, Mr. Chair, whether through unanimous consent or on division, to have those witnesses representing the workers who are ultimately impacted by this added to this list.
Yeah, Mr. Green, I appreciate you wanting to add to that list. I will have to accept that as an amendment, if that's what you want to propose, and then we can discuss the amendment and then come back to the committee and see if we do indeed have consensus. If not, then we'll have to have a vote on it. Can I have consensus among the committee to add those 2 names to the list? I have consensus. Okay, thank you for that. Madame Cousy, vous avez la parole.
You have the floor.
And thank you very much for the committee having me here today to be a part of this conversation. Mr. Chair, as you can well imagine, we were very concerned when we found out late last week that 13 different federal departments and agencies had this spyware attached to them, and they include, but are not limited to, Mr. Chair, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Environment Canada, Canada Revenue Agency, Global Affairs Canada. As a former employee of Global Affairs Canada, I'm especially troubled by this agency. The Canada Border Services Agency, the Department of National Defence, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and several other institutions are using this spyware technology, as I said, we became aware of late last week. So this is being used across government, Mr. Chair. This isn't limited to a single department, to a single agency. This is being used across government. What's even more concerning, Mr. Chair, is what this spyware is capturing, and it really runs the gamut of all communications across government, Mr. Chair. It includes text messages. All of those text messages employees have sent to their friends, to their family, and of course we all know we use our phones on a daily basis. The sensitive information included in these text messages, information about where your children go to school, if you have to pick them up, your place of work perhaps, any medical appointments you might have. The most sensitive information, Mr. Chair, is communicated through these text messages. Contacts, entire contact list. Can you imagine your entire contact list being made public, being in the hands of the government, being exposed to exposure of being released, being shared with those you had not intended to share your contacts with. Photos, Mr. Chair. You know, I enjoy taking photos, especially at this time of year when there are so many beautiful decorations across the Capitol and elsewhere. But having your entire photo library, Mr. Kirk, being shared across government, that is absolutely concerning, and travel history as well. That the government, through this spyware, Mr. Chair, has a history of your travel. That's very concerning as well. This spyware, Mr. Chair, can also be used to access cloud-based data. What isn't in the cloud in this day and age? This is what this government has exposed our public servants to, having their cloud-based information across the network. Internet search history. I, for one, would certainly not like my internet search history put out for the public to see in terms of what movies I'm interested in, perhaps, items I'd perhaps be considering buying my family for the holidays. I mean, this is the most personal of information that we're talking about here, Mr. President, that has been gathered through this spyware and is now in the hands of government. Deleted content. We've all had content, Mr. Chair, that we have deleted in an effort to try and dispose of. Certainly, we've all heard the fact that once it's in the internet, it's out there forever. Who knew that with this government, once it's on your phone, it's with the government forever? But that apparently, according to this report here, is the case. And finally, Mr. Chair, social media activity. Every single post you've ever liked, everything you've ever reposted, every comment that you've ever made, if you are with one of these federal agencies, Mr. Chair, is now in the hands of government. Very, very concerning. And you know what, Mr. Chair, public servants are concerned as well. They are gravely concerned. They wonder, and I quote, why any government office would need such access to people's private information. But yet this is here where we are, Mr. Kirk and Monsieur Gord, at this point, where they have access to this private information. And I'll go on to quote two witnesses who were fortunately added here to the list. Ms. Carr, I should say, president of the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada. We need to make sure that if our personal information is gathered, that we know about what information is gathered, how it's being used, and how it could be affected if there are others who were able to access it. My goodness, you have any breach of public information in this day and age, a responsible corporation immediately notifies you of it. In this situation, our public service wasn't even being notified of the collection of this information, never mind a potential breach of it. In a statement, the Public Servants Alliance of Canada National President Chris Alward, another witness I see you have fortunately added, called the use of such technology without a privacy assessment alarming and shows a deliberate lack of transparency and accountability by federal departments and agencies. These words could not be closer to the truth, Mr. Chair. But to add insult to injury, Mr. Chair, is I, in my role as Shadow Minister to the Treasury Board, to the President of the Treasury Board, in the effort to get a response from her, many media outlets were denied any communication from her, any statements. So I, yesterday, Mr. Chair, sent her this letter asking her, under Section 3.2, the directive of the privacy impact assessment, to take responsibility for this. Because I hear my Liberal colleagues saying, oh, you know, we have these measures in place, they should be enforced. Well, the Treasury Board does have oversight of this under Section 3.2, where it states that the President of the Treasury Board holds general responsibility for registering all privacy impact assessments and reviewing the manner in which they are maintained and managed in all government institutions. And yet, we also see in the article, Mr. Chair, that we've learned that these departments' use of spyware did not undergo privacy impact assessments as is required under 3.2 of the PIA under the responsibility of the President of the Treasury Board. To add insult to injury, So, I mean, this just gets worse and worse. So in this letter, Mr. Chair, I hope you will be assured, my Conservative colleagues here will be assured, my Bloc and NDP colleagues will be assured, the government will be assured that I have called upon her to immediately enforce compliance. And if those privacy impact assessments are still not initiated by your end, follow through on the obligations by enforcing the consequences of non-compliance. Because this is certainly the very least that can be done when we find out that this spyware is in place after the lack of oversight by the Treasury Board, by the lack of oversight by this government, that this can at least begin to be made right. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, I'll say I think what concerns us most on this side over here, my Conservative colleagues and I, is what was referred to in an article which was just published yesterday, I should say, and that is the idea of I want everyone to hear this phrase, the normalization of surveillance. The normalization of surveillance.
Terrifying.
It is terrifying. I think all Canadians should be consumed with the normalization of surveillance. I'm not even going to get into the digital ID issue here, but the normalization of surveillance, and they have good reason to be concerned, as we have found in this information that was uncovered last week. So I cannot state the urgency and the necessity of this study as brought forward, and thank you very much to my colleague for doing so. This must be addressed. This must be addressed immediately to quell the concerns of the public service and to further provide Canadians with confidence that this government gives a darn about their privacy, Mr. Chair. Following that, Mr. Chair, I too would like to move an amendment at this moment to build upon the motion which was put forward. And if the moment is right, Mr. Chair, I will read it into the record.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Amendment.
That between the dates of January 8th and January 29th, 2024, the committee undertake a study concerning the use of technological tools capable of extracting personal data from telephones and computers in investigative processes conducted by several federal government departments and agencies, that the committee focus in particular on the reasons justifying the use of this investigative equipment by the various government institutions and on the privacy risk assessment process, and that the committee devote 4 meetings to this study.
On the amendment proposed by Ms. Kuzi, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome Ms. Kuzi back to committee, and certainly, there's a keen interest in this. I think that's been expressed already around the table. What I would share with you is I will not be supporting this amendment, particularly based on the timelines on commitments that I'm sure many of us already have within our constituencies.
Not seeing anyone else wanting to speak on the amendment. Do we have consensus on the amendment? No, we don't. Okay, so I'm going to ask Madam Clerk to take a vote on the amendment. And the amendment, again, a reminder to change the dates from January 8th to the 29th and then reduce the number of meetings from 6 to 4. So on the amendment, Madam Clerk.
On the amendment from Ms. Kusi, Mr. Baines.
No.
Ms. Hefner. Mr. Callaway.
No.
Madame Fortier.
No.
Ms. Latanzio.
No.
Ms. Kusi.
En faveur.
Monsieur Gourde.
Oui.
Mr. Couric.
Yes.
Monsieur Villemur.
Je suis contre.
Mr. Green.
Je suis contre.
Yeas 3, nays 7.
It's like Duolingo.
Okay, so the amendment as proposed is defeated. Ms. Hepner, you have the floor on the main motion as amended. Go ahead, Ms. Hepner.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to start off by saying I agree. It's concerning that departments aren't following the privacy impact assessments. It's a really important process, and the department should be following that. Maybe that directive needs to be strengthened. I think there's value in this study when it comes to that. But I think that we should be careful about our rhetoric and the not using our words correctly. So, for example, spyware is not something that the Government of Canada uses. Spyware is illegal. Technically, it's malware or malicious code. The Government of Canada does not use any of that. The software that we're talking about is specialized software, and it's used in digital forensics, so part of incident response. This isn't something that applies to Canadians in general. It applies to public servants who work for the Government of Canada, and it's specialized software, for example, that's used in internal investigations. So when employees are suspected of fraud or workplace harassment, and it's always done in accordance with internal protocols that govern the collection and storage of personal information to ensure its protection. So I'm just cautioning the committee not to use so much hyperbole. We don't want to spread fear among Canadians. This is not a widespread program that's being used across the board. It's being used internally to monitor employees of the government. And yes, I agree that there should be a study done to look at why the privacy impact assessments haven't been done by the departments, because that's the key here.
I want to just echo some of the comments Ms. Hepner made there. Just to clarify a couple things. Yeah, spyware is not used. It's malware or malicious code, which the Government of Canada does not use. So I think that that needs to be clarified, number one. And I did want to talk a little bit about, just the way we're scheduling some of these things and how we're getting some of these departments to come before us. I think there's some challenges with, we all know, with the minister's schedules and we often don't know what the minister's schedule is. And I think it's important to hear, this isn't a very important issue, of course, and if the privacy impact assessments are not being followed by these departments that's been set before them, I think it's important to ensure that we speak to each department, understand what's been taking place, and maybe just have the order of the witnesses that are being called changed around, where we get the departments in first, and maybe have the president of the Treasury Board, follow after that. So maybe just modify the scheduling of that, so we can hear from the departments first. So I think I'd like to move an amendment to what's been put forward here.
Mr. Couric, on the amendment to have the president of the Treasury Board appear, but not necessarily first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I would just highlight one troubling trend that we see with the Liberals is the disconnect between Parliament and executive government. The president of the Treasury Board, as a minister of the Crown, I think it would be entirely justified for that that to be the first meeting that takes place. I think that the one in charge is incumbent upon the position. It speaks to that the necessity of accountability and the fact that the buck stops, and then, quite frankly, to the point, the practical matter that if more information comes up, this committee could pass a motion to have that minister appear again. The disconnect between what Parliament wants, says, and in some cases even dictates, is simply not respected by the Liberals. I think that the ability for that minister to attend the first meeting and to kick off this study makes perfect sense, and there should be there should not be a fear. For that minister, if there is nothing to hide, there should not be a fear about the questions that will be asked and hopefully answered in that regard. So I certainly don't think we should support the amendment. I think that the president of the Treasury Board can start, and if it necessitates calling the president of the Treasury Board back, then so be it.
You, Mr. Kirk. We're on the amendment by Mr. Baines. Not seeing any other hands up. Do we have consensus on the amendment that's being moved by Mr. Baines? No. We don't. Okay. So I'm going to ask the clerk to call a vote on the amendment. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
On the amendment from Mr. Baines himself.
Yes.
Ms. Hefner.
En faveur.
Mr. Callaway.
Yes.
Madame Fortier.
Oui.
Madame Latanzio.
Oui.
Ms. Coucy. Monsieur Gourde.
No.
Mr. Couric.
No.
Monsieur Villemur. Mr. Green. Yeas 7, nays 3, oui 7, non 3.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The amendment passes. We are now back to the main motion as amended a couple of times. Any other discussion on the main motion as amended? I don't see any other discussion. Do we have consensus on we want to vote? Okay, Madam Clerk, if you can call the vote.
Alors, le vote sur la motion de Monsieur Villemur, tel que modifié.
On Mr. Villemur's amended motion.
Yes.
Ms. Hefner.
En faveur.
Mr. Callaway.
Oui.
Madame Fortier.
Oui.
Madame Latanzio.
Oui.
Mrs. Coucy.
Oui.
Monsieur Gourde. Mr. Couric.
Yes.
Monsieur Villemur. Mr. Green.
Oh, la motion?
All yeas, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we are unanimous in the motion has passed as amended. We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.